Fegler, Senior Editor of Ohio Magazine, along with our Art Director, Leslie Blake. And we are at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History to explore the world of extreme mammals, the biggest, smallest, and most amazing mammals of all time. Accompanying us today on our journey is Case Western Reserve University Anatomy Professor, Darren Croft, who is also a Museum Research Associate. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Well, really, this exhibit seems to be really all-encompassing. It gives a marvelous overview of so many species, many of which we really never knew existed. Wouldn't you say?
I'm glad you think so. Yeah, that's really what we were aiming for. It's what we call a specimen-rich exhibit. There's just lots and lots to see, and if nothing else, it just gives you an appreciation for the diversity of mammals that are around today, and as you said, the ones that are no longer around.
Oh, it's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about how this exhibit came together and the work you did with it, too?
This was initiated by the American Museum of Natural History in New York, and they have fantastic collections that they're able to draw on to form the core of this exhibit. And they tapped a few other museums from around North America to see if they would be interested in collaborating. We were one of them. And so with that, we're able to go to some of the meetings and direct the content a little bit. And some of my research is featured at the end of this exhibit.
Wow, now talk a little bit about your research. You were telling us about that earlier.
Well, my marketable skill is teaching anatomy to medical students, but when I'm not doing that, I go down to South America and I hunt for fossil mammals, mostly between about 10 million and 40 million years ago.
Oh my gosh, now how did you get interested in that?
It was one of these things that I guess I never outgrew. I always had a fascination with dinosaurs. I had a grade school teacher that showed us how to go out and collect fossils back in Nebraska when I was growing up. And we didn't have dinosaurs or even mammals in my part of the state. We had seashells like you find around in a lot of places of Ohio. And that really got me into finding fossils, and I just was able to stick with it through graduate school, and this is where I am now.
Can you talk a little bit about, indeed, the most extreme mammals that are part of the exhibit?
Boy, it'd be tough to even do that in an hour-long special, but I'll give you some of the highlights. Of course, the first thing that you'll see when you come in is the biggest land mammal that's ever lived, an animal that's called Indricotherium, which is really a huge rhinoceros.
Okay.
But the way that it's different from rhinos that are around today, not only is its size, but just the fact that it's so tall, so it's massive. It probably weighed somewhere between 10 and 20 tons.
Oh, wow.
Huge, huge animal, much bigger than even a bull elephant around today. Right next to it, we have the smallest mammal that we think ever lived, a little thing called Batodontoides, which weighed about the same as a dollar bill.
Oh.
It's a relative of a shrew. You can find shrews all over Ohio today. You walk through the exhibit, we look at different animals from heads to tail. We have interesting things like Macrauchenia, which is a mixture between maybe a tapir and a camel that lived in South America, went extinct about 10,000 years ago. We have brains from different animals. We have a walking whale. And I think one of the real favorites with people who have come through the exhibit are naked mole rats, one of the few living mammals that we have in the exhibit.
The live portion of the exhibit.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. What are some of the finds that you found in your research that is here?
Our research is highlighted near the end of the exhibit in an area known as extreme isolation. Behind me represents the extreme in armor for a mammal. This is the shell or carapace of an animal known as a glyptodon. And it's basically the mammal version of a tortoise. It's kind of like an armadillo, and these are related to armadillos. These are totally extinct now. But unlike an armadillo, it couldn't roll up. This is a huge animal. They got up into the southern part of North America, and they only went extinct about 10,000 years ago. But they were very common in the hot fossil history of South America. So when we go to South America, which is what I do for my research, and we look for fossil mammals, this is one of the sorts of mammals that we look for. What we have here on my left is an example of something that we found. This is from a much older glyptodon. This animal was about 18 million years old, and we have part of its shell here. That was a complete one we were looking at before, but this is just part of it. We have a jaw, and we have a leg bone. And this is an important specimen because it represents a new species, and it's the oldest species that we have that's represented by parts of the shell, parts of the jaw, and parts of the bone. And that's very important because it tells us a lot about how glyptodons got to be such big armored tanks like they were when they finally went extinct 10,000 years ago.
What do you hope that people take away from the exhibit when they come?
Certainly one of the things I hope that they experience is learning a little bit more about mammals. I hope everyone comes away saying, you know, I never really realized that that's what makes a mammal, or that there was anything that looked like that. I think the other real thing I'd like people to take away is the fact that although there's this great diversity of mammals, many of them are endangered. You know, maybe 1 out of every 4 mammals today is endangered, mostly due to the effects of human habitat destruction. And I hope that people, if they gain a greater appreciation for mammals, then they'll get more involved in trying to preserve the habitats where these mammals occur.
Can you just sort of mention maybe one that is in extreme danger that you're particularly, striving to protect?
Well, an interesting one that's come up recently is the Tasmanian devil.
Which
And
everyone's heard of in some form.
Everyone's heard
a
of or
cartoon,
seen.
this kind of character. But there really is such a...
There really is such a thing. And this is an interesting one because it's not necessarily humans' fault, but humans have a huge role in trying to protect it. They have what's essentially a cancer of the mouth that they can transmit to each other. And it causes huge tumors so they can't eat and they can't see and they die. And what we're having to do now is go in and take unaffected animals and try to sequester them until this thing passes by. But if we're not able to do that, they could go totally extinct.
Do we know what that cancer is caused from yet? When that happens?
Nope, it's just probably some mutation that popped up,
Okay.
and unfortunately it allows cells to just go crazy, and it's really difficult to get rid of something like that.
Well, that's really important work that you're doing there. Thank you for that, and making us all aware of that. Well, Extreme Mammals will be at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History through April 17th. For more information, call 216-231-4600 or visit cmnh.org. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being here.